we used to be Historians Against the War, and now we've chosen a new name. It's called Historians for Peace and Democracy. Given the current situation, the current crisis that we believe we as a country, we as a nation are in, and the main issue was to talk about what can we as historians do, both working together with each other, working with other people to try and contribute to a national dialogue, to a campus dialogue, to talk about the moment we find ourselves in, and what are the historical parallels, what are the historical differences. And one of the main things we've actually focused on today is the whole issue of Korea. And we're working with a number of national peace organizations, with different Korean organizations, to talk about the upcoming Olympics in South Korea as a particular moment in which to focus on, hopefully, peace between peace in the region, peace with the United States as well. And one thing is, we thought, for example, as historians, we need to be talking to people about the Korean War and how the Korean War in many ways was the origins or the prototype for a lot of the wars that followed throughout the 20th and 21st century, why that was important, why are the ramifications for today. But since we are historians for peace and democracy, we also feel that it's essential that we broaden out and draw the different connections. So we're also focusing, for example, on issues related to immigration, on our students, many of whom are dreamers, who face the potential threat of being kicked off campus. So we see ourselves as an organization that is, in a sense, whose function is to draw historians together as intellectuals, but also as activists, as people who have specific skills, specific knowledge, but also work together with others to promote peace and democracy.
Let's go back to what you were just talking about with Korea. In what ways was Korea a template for the wars that came after?
The ways that Korea was a template is that here you saw, in a sense, a civil war that was taking place within a country, and which the United States intervened in and internationalized in a way that had no reason to be internationalized. It was an internal, to them, domestic situation. It was a situation that was couched in terms of a global conflict, the Cold War, at that point in time, which ignored the internal domestic issues that the Koreans were really struggling about. It brought together this sense of us versus them, which has been a constant throughout much of U.S. history. But I think in terms of the post-World War II era, I think it had a particular defining moment in which the United States intervened, in that sense, interestingly, in a nation, which, and for that reason, was also very much of a predecessor to what happened not that not that much in the future in Vietnam. And I think it was this whole idea of this situation which most Americans, most people in the United States knew very little about, but were galvanized about, based on issues of race, based on issues of the enemy other, to say, yes, we should send U.S. troops in there, even though, and we could say, substitute Iraq, substitute Yemen, substitute Vietnam. Most people probably could not have been able to find Korea on the map even, but the whole sense was we are on a mission, and the mission was unclear, except to contain the enemy, and the enemy at that point was communism. So now we have another enemy, but the basic idea is still that we need to fight the good war, although it's always very vague.
Marilyn Young wrote a book a few years ago,
yes,
in which she talked about how the American people were very indifferent during the Korean War to the deaths of Korean people. They cared if Americans were dying, and they wanted the war wrapped up, and they were even willing to use a nuclear bomb to end it fast. Is this one of the things that you have been talking about?
Most definitely, because I think, unfortunately, for most people, especially younger generations, I think the concept of a nuclear war is somewhat nebulous, to put it politely. That there's just sort of, what is a nuclear war? Most of these people, maybe experience of nuclear war, concept of nuclear war is the mushroom cloud, and that, I don't think it goes too much beyond that. And I think what that means for most people is, as one person in the meeting said, his stepson said, well, so what, they drop a bomb on North Korea? It won't affect me. And I think the concept that if you drop a nuclear bomb on North Korea, there will be global ramifications, and yes, it will affect you. I think that's something that we, as historians, not only as historians, many people could say, yes, it goes way beyond us as historians, but how it affects you. And I think it's not only the danger of intensified war, but it's also, what does it mean that you have a militaristic mentality that says, instead of dialogue, instead of looking for a peaceful solution, we will instead spend millions, if not billions, of money to destroy a population. We'll just wipe them out, and that will solve the problem. Whereas we all know we are in a nation that is facing grave, serious economic issues. To veer a teeny bit, look at Puerto Rico. The fact that it is now 102, I'm not sure quite how many days, since Hurricane Maria, the majority of Puerto Rican people still do not have electricity. And yet, there's this discussion about possibly just dropping a nuclear bomb on Korea. I think we have to reorient a discussion to say, look, instead of destroying things, what if we talk about constructing things? What if we say, how can we use money in a positive direction? How can we, for example, ensure that our students have an education so that they don't come out of the university in massive debt?